keeping you in tune with the planet. Here's another ICRT podcast.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock. I'm Liz Tsai, and it's time for Easy News on ICRT. Chinese philanthropist Chen Guangbiao donated roughly 6.7 million NT dollars to disadvantaged residents in Hsinchu County yesterday. Chen is in Taiwan for a heavily publicized philanthropic tour of the country. According to Chen, his charity is in response to the outpouring of support Taiwanese showed for Chinese victims after the 2008 Sichuan earthquake. He says he plans to donate 500 million NT dollars in total to the poor in Taiwan. The tycoon made his fortune recycling construction materials and is well known in China for the extravagant way he carries out charity work. Chen is scheduled to continue his tour in Nantou and Hualien during the remainder of his trip. According to a report on shark conservation, Taiwan is the world's fourth largest shark catcher. A report released by the wildlife trade monitoring group Traffic and the Pew Environment Group identifies the top 20 shark-catching countries and assesses their management of conservation measures. The analysis shows that the top 20 countries account for about 80% of total reported shark catches, or about 640,000 tons. Taiwan accounts for 5.8% of shark catches. According to the report, about 30% of all shark species are threatened or near threatened with extinction as a result of unregulated fishing. Taiwan's Fisheries Agency Director Sha Zhiyi says Taiwan has enforced conservation measures adopted by regional fisheries management organizations since 2006. However, Sha said the government will still enhance its inspection procedures to crack down on illegal fishing. In international news, internet service in Egypt was disrupted and the government has deployed an elite special operations force in Cairo today. A new wave of anti-government protests is expected today. Anti-government protesters are calling for the ouster of President Hosni Mubarak after 30 years in power. The counter-terror force, rarely seen on the streets, is a sign that Mubarak's regime is toughening its crackdown on the protests. The 82-year-old Mubarak has not been seen in public or heard from since the protests began on Tuesday. Tens of thousands have marched in Cairo and a string of other cities. U.S. President Barack Obama is calling for calm in Egypt, but is also urging President Hosni Mubarak to agree to reforms demanded by anti-government protesters. The AP's Mark Smith reports.
The president says he's repeatedly pressed Mubarak to accept dissent and political opposition and can understand what's behind the protests.
You can see these pent-up frustrations that are being displayed on the streets.
Obama is urging both police and protesters to avoid violence.
Violence is not the answer in solving these problems in Egypt.
But in an interview carried on YouTube, he said basic rights of speech and assembly are universal values and no less valid in the Arab world than they are in America. Mark Smith at the White House.
In U.S. news, according to an official, the $20 billion fund set aside to compensate victims of BP's Gulf of Mexico oil spill has received more than 7,000 potentially fraudulent claims. The Justice Department has already indicted 8 claimants. The fund was set up in August to handle thousands of claims for compensation from residents, business owners, and fishermen across the Gulf Coast and beyond who can prove they suffered financial losses from BP's oil well blowout off the coast of Louisiana in April of last year. The Deepwater Horizon explosion killed 11 rig workers and sent millions of gallons of crude into the Gulf. The fund will continue operating until 2013 because that's how long claimants have to decide whether to take a final settlement, accept interim quarterly payments, or ignore the claim and sue instead. Mass transit systems on the U.S.'s East Coast are digging out from another storm, hoping to restore normal service to thousands of delayed passengers. The AP's Martin DeCaro reports from New York.
Walk into Penn Station and witness time standing still. Well, at least travelers are standing still, lumped with their bags, weary of waiting, hoping that on the big departures board the word late flips to boarding.
It's been lousy.
It'll be fine when my train leaves. But I'm on the train because my flight got canceled.
Well, we're all mesmerized by the board. The board knows all. So once the board tells us what to do, we'll either be happy or sad. If only they could all be as lucky as a visitor from Texas who hadn't seen a snowflake all winter until now, and her train was on time. Martin DeCaro, New York.
Looking at weather across Taiwan, we have rain in the north with a high of 17 degrees, partly cloudy skies forecast for the center and south with a high of 23 in the center and a high of 24 in the south. Current temperatures are 17 degrees in Taipei, 18 in Taichung, and currently 19 degrees down south in Kaohsiung. That's Easy News at 10.